Okay, today I want to talk about phrasal verbs again, and I'm going to use a children's book to show you that, this is the book, by the way, Mr Clumsy. I'm going to use this book to show you that the phrasal verbs are learnt from a very young age. And anyway, I think it's a very good book for learning these words, because of course these kind of books are for very young children, and well, really it's for adults to read them to young children when they're very small. And so really young children, they do learn these phrasal verbs first of all. So let's have a look at the first page. It was a rather nice morning. In the sky the sun was up, shining. In the trees the birds were up, singing. But Mr Clumsy wasn't up. His alarm clock went off. He woke up. He reached out his arm to switch off his alarm clock, and he knocked his alarm clock onto the floor. Okay, so in those first two pages we've already had at least 5 or 6 phrasal verbs. The important ones: to be up, it means to be awake. The alarm clock goes off. I said his alarm clock went off. Alarms go off, bombs go off, fireworks go off. It's when something is activated and makes a noise or an explosion. Okay, on the next page we heard that he woke up, very well known phrasal verb. He reached out his arm, reached out. Out is far away from the body, so he reached out his arm and he wanted to switch off his alarm clock or turn off, and he knocked it on the floor. Now remember, with this verb knock, it's very similar to fall. If you knock something over, if you knock your cup over, it falls over like that. Remember, people fall over, they don't fall down. I don't think we say people fall down, we say people fall over, and we knock something over, and it's when something is standing up and then it falls over. Knock something over. But you can also knock something off the table, just like you can fall off the table. You can fall off your bike. You can knock someone off their bike if you push them off their bike. So these prepositions are prepositions of movement. They're showing us the movement, and off always means when something is sitting or standing on something and it goes off of that surface. So knock something off the table, fall off the bike, push someone off the bike. It's all the same prepositions. Okay, if we come on to the next page, we see that he gets out of his bed, he switches on the radio, and the switch, the knob, comes off in his hand. So here, 3 phrasal verbs on the next page. Get out of bed, get into bed. Just like get out of a car and get into a car. This get out and get in is always when you're in some kind of box and or room. So you go into a room and you go out of a room. You go into a house and you go out of a house. So get into and get out of, or go into and go out of, they're used for when something goes into a box, some kind of object with volume which it can go into and also get out of. Okay, with come off, this is very similar to take something off. You take something off your body when you're talking about clothes and you put it on. So the opposite of come off, again, it would be put on. If Mr Clumsy wants to put the knob back on the radio, yeah, back on, you notice I say, because it's back into its place. He puts it on the radio. Okay? I'm certain everybody here knows switch on and switch off, turn on, turn off, so you should just remember those, but again, we learn them at a very young age. Okay, on the next page, we have the phrasal verbs. He picked up the letter, he went into the kitchen, and unfortunately, instead of putting bread in the toaster, put something in the toaster, he put a letter in the toaster. And the letter caught fire, of course. But notice put in, again, into and out of. Put in, take out. Okay, so on the next page we see that he takes the letter out of the toaster. It actually uses the word fish He fishes the letter out of the toaster. This is like fishing, but it's still fish something out of something, take something out of the toaster. Okay. On the next page, he bends down. I think that's quite simple. Bends down. You can also say bend over here. Bend over, bend down. To pick the letter up, but when he bends over, he bangs his head and he gets his head stuck. Very useful expression, get stuck. He gets his head stuck in the bread bin. In fact, he can't get the bread bin off of his head. So again, get off, like take off. Very similar, we're using the same preposition because it's a very similar movement. Okay, there are actually, that's only half the book, there are actually many more, but I just wanted to look at some of those prepositions of movement. I think that they're the most important ones. I hope that you use them in your conversations, because everybody does use them here. And it's just practice. Just keep practicing using them, and it does get easier. Thanks for listening.